I'm going to teach you to suck eggs. Everything I say in these informal little chin wags, probably you know anyway. I'm not actually teaching you anything new, and it's really it's just a way of expressing something that's, I guess, on my mind, and you might be able to help me with. Which is why I asked a load of questions at the end, and am genuinely interested in your comments. So I may well be teaching you suck eggs in today's episode. It's called Improve Your Thinking because I honestly believe that the best way to use the noggin that we've been given is to exercise it. Well, clearly exercise is the thing that makes people get better. The more you do something, the better it becomes. Also, like building a hobby, a habit. You can build a hobby if you so wish. A habit, if you're building a habit like learning to drive, and you want to be able to just drive without thinking about the movement of the steering wheel, when to change gear, how much to accelerate, when to use the brake, etc. You just keep practicing because it becomes automatic. Not the car, you become automatic, and your amazing subconscious mind is doing all the work for you. You might consciously intervene in some of it as you're driving along and go, I need to turn because something's happened. But on the whole, if everything's just going well, it's all happening without you even really having to think about it. And I think that's a marvellous capacity of the mind. So this thing about improve your thinking, I think that one way of improving the thinking and making things clearer in your head, and very often we need to make things clearer in your head because we get confounded by things, don't we? We're being bombarded, like I was talking about social media yesterday, and people are throwing their opinions at you. The mainstream media is guiding you and telling you how to think and what you should do, and you watch television, as we mentioned before, and the soap operas and the various commentators are sort of subtly telling you how you should think, or what you should think, or what is the accepted way of thinking. And so you don't do it yourself. It's almost as if we no longer put those deep philosophical ideas that we might cogitate and ruminate about over to somebody else. And I think that that's not a very good thing. That's where the sheep come in. The sheep follow those enlightened ones. And we think that everybody, we think that very few people are enlightened ones. And wow, he said something really interesting and really good, or she mentioned something that was really marvellous. I'll just go and follow whatever she says because it saves me thinking for myself. And that is the thing, that thinking it's not a difficult thing. It's just, I suppose a lot of people are just bloody lazy. They just can't be asked to sit down and work things out for themselves. And so when I say improve your thinking, one of the things I think that improves your thinking is actually to do some thinking. You don't get taught this at school, do you? And yet you're assumed, because you're a human being and that you're sentient, that you can think. And of course we've all got desires and wants, and when you're a kid you desperately have those desires, and especially as you get through puberty, those desires in certain areas become extremely strong, not just sexually, I don't think, but I think all sorts of weird and wonderful desires approach us, and we don't really know how to deal with it. We're just like, bloody hell, I want this, I need this, and you have no life experience to say, actually, do you know what, that's just a phase you're going through, and in a few years' time you'll be over that phase, and actually you can learn from those forceful desires that you had no control over. But you need to live, you need to live, which is why it's so sad when you hear of young people under 20, for example, who find themselves in either incredibly bad habits that they can't get out of, or they're in such an emotional state that they self-harm, or they run away from home, or worse, they take their own lives because of an emotional, perhaps they've had a bad experience with a member of the opposite sex or a member of the same sex who's jilted them, and they no longer feel that they are worthy, or they just can't, that you can't go on. And yet another 5 years later, they would, if they hadn't have, say, taken their life, they would look back at themselves and go, oh my God, I just didn't have enough life experience to understand that time is a great healer, and actually I'm all right. And it's so sad when that happens, because time is a great healer. However, and that's about experience, and I'm talking more about thinking, although you are thinking about the experiences you had. So let's get to the point then, old Vobes. All right, I'll try to. Thinking, I think, one of the best ways to distill your thoughts and concentrate your thoughts has to be writing things down. Write it down. Write what's in your head down. It distills what's floating about, because I think the thing about writing it down, there's a second alternative to writing it down, and that is speaking it aloud, which is what I do a hell of a lot of. Although speaking it aloud to someone or into a recording, which I do every day on the Naked Englishman podcast that I do, isn't always terribly entertaining. I don't try to make it entertaining. I'm trying to take certain thoughts and develop them and try and pin them down and find out where I'm going with these thoughts. But the difference, the same thing is going on. I'm trying to change, whether I'm writing it down or speaking it aloud. I'm trying to get what is in here that isn't in word form necessarily. It's sort of concept floating about, weird notion-y form, which I don't really know how you would describe that. It's just that it's not in coherent language, using sentences syntaxed, like speech marks and commas and capital letters and all of that, or in anything. It's in some weird mixture of perhaps some bits of language, some bits of emotion, some bits of just understanding. It's in a sort of miasma, is it? A cloud of something that you kind of are trying to, oh yeah, I kind of think this and I sort of think that, and I'm not sure what it is. Writing it down, getting it into some concrete form, or speaking it aloud and, say, recording it or telling it to somebody else, is where it's an amazing process. Don't ask me how it works, but it's an amazing process in which you take this weird stuff, this sort of cloud of busyness that, in a cartoon, I would be drawing it like a cloud, like you see in some, sometimes you see these sort of punch-up scenes where in a cartoon where you just see the odd fist coming in, a hammer coming in, and, it's like that. You've got, whatever the idea is about, you've got sort of, I don't know, an anvil and a car and a motorbike, and it's in this sort of weird cloud. And you're taking this and you're trying to sort of, in stages, crystallize it so that you can express it in a language that somebody else can understand, and also yourself. And so writing it down is great. That's one of the reasons I keep a journal. So every day I have a journal. It's not terribly interesting. I went to the shop and bought some milk. It's not quite like that, but sometimes it is. Sometimes, I'm a bit, sometimes I miss out days, and sometimes it's weeks. But generally, I keep a diary, a journal of what's gone on in my life, because it's just the practice, really, of trying to sort of, help you remember, what the hell did I do yesterday? What did I do today? What did I do an hour ago? I can't remember. What was the chin wet? What was I waffling on about? I have no idea. So it's that practice of writing it down and crystallizing it. Then, and of course, if I'm working on a project, I will make note forms, and sometimes I will, in fact, write whole sentences and go, here's so one of the things that I spend a lot of my time on, because unfortunately I'm not terribly intelligent and I can't quite work this out, and it seems to be a huge upward struggle, is how do you make YouTube successful for me? And you can watch all the gurus and all of that, and everyone tells you you've got to do this and you've got to do that, and you do that. They say, yeah, well, I'm kind of doing all of that, still not really working for me, and you're trying to go, there's still something missing, and I'm desperately trying to find out what it is. And so I make notes, and I'll write it out. Am I doing this? Should I doing more? And you're trying to explain it to myself, and I'll make these stupid notes and what have you. But it's that form of trying to get, rather than having vague notions of things, into a crystallized form. The other thing I say is speaking aloud. Now, I love the speaking aloud thing, which is why I come to this chinwag and I talk to you guys, not as an expert, very much not as an expert, as somebody who is just an average Joe, if you like, an ordinary Fred Blogs, trying to work out in my head an idea or a theme, and then I ask you what you think. Part of why I don't make notes for this is because, again, I enjoy the challenge and the practice of trying to take an idea out of my head and put it into a language that hopefully you can understand. I very much enjoy that notion of dissecting something almost under pressure. Put the camera on, talk about a subject that you perhaps haven't given a huge amount of thought, and try and put it into something so that other people can understand. So you could say, Richard, your answer on how to make a YouTube channel a lot more effective is to have your idea, write it all down, get the notes, do it verbatim, get it absolutely spot on, and then turn the camera on, and you'll be fine. And that may be the answer. That may be how I should do it. But for the chinwag, the whole idea of this chinwag is to be informal and to almost share the thought process as I go along, because I just think it's more genuine and it's more real, and it is real. I might be sitting in a studio that looks all very technical and all very, expensive and this, that, and the other, and I may be using lights and all of this, and it might be, oh, look at him, he thinks he's the big king pin and he's there, isn't he, and all of this. That's not really what it's about. It's about trying to be genuine and tackling a concept and then sharing it with you, and then looking at your comments about it. So improving, this is just my idea. You may say, actually, I have better ideas for improving your thinking. I don't think altogether. Improve your thinking, don't even entertain most of it. You may say that thinking is not for you. But thinking surely is the thing that differentiate. You see, I'm using words, and A, I'm not always certain that I'm using the right word. B, I'm not always certain I'm pronouncing it correctly. Or C, I know I'm using the right word and I can't quite get the pronunciation because there's a camera looking at me, and I'm aware that people are going to be hypercritical of the slightest thing I say, and suddenly it's like when things go out of your head. And you go, oh, I know the word, but there's a camera looking at you, and suddenly that pressure to get it out seems... And so practicing this seems to me the best way to, the more you put yourself in the headlights, the more you just turn the camera on and speak and try and speak, rather than just doing it, in the mirror or to nobody where it doesn't matter. Here it matters. It means I can't just go, oh, sod it, I can't think of it. What is it? Oh, it doesn't matter. I've got to actually try. This is the thing. I've got to try, because there's people who've given me an opportunity to talk to them. And so this is why it's important that I get this right. So I can't even remember now what that point was I was trying to make, because that's another thing that I often do, as you probably are aware, is I'll disappear down a rabbit hole and I can't quite remember where the entrance was. Hopefully the audience weren't that bothered about that particular point anyway, and they've just joined me in the rabbit hole. So I think improving your thinking is about, it's exercising. Oh yeah, so us humans... We're different, I think, from animals, because we have the ability not just to react to what's happening now and have some subconscious thought process that's come through our DNA, so that a butterfly can fly 25,000 miles across from one continent to another and actually survive and indeed return, and their brain is the size of a pinhead, that they can do that. We have the ability to think about the past, think about the future, plan things, and all of that. We can think about what it must be like for somebody else. We have all these sort of abilities, and I think it is beholden to us, in a way, to use this amazing thing in our head and actually think. The sad reality is most people don't seem to think. Most people, as I said at the beginning, they seem quite happy to let someone else do the thinking. So, the government says you mustn't come out. It's beholden on you to stay in your house and don't challenge the science. There's a global warming thing. Don't challenge it. And we go, oh, and here's the reasons why. And you read it and go, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, fair enough. But I'm saying that it's worth challenging it, even if at the end of the day you say, actually, my challenge doesn't hold water at all. I've realised that it's rubbish. Because you've been exercising the brain. You just said, well, let's have a look at the opposite side of this coin. Everybody's going down this. Why is that so right? Maybe there is another answer to it. And so one challenges, and you might hold that opinion for a while, but then you might go, actually, I've had this revelation and I've thought about it, and actually I'm the same with everybody else. I've gone into the sheep capacity, and it's fine because now I understand it. Or you might say, no, the more I reason about this, the more I think that lockdowns were bad for the public, for their public health, or that the hospitals were saying don't come to the hospital if you've got COVID because you should stay at home and infect everybody else in your household. And not only that, get really bad and then come to the hospital when you're nearly dying, because when you're dying, it's quite useful for us because actually we can say you died of COVID and it makes the figures seem even more dramatic. It's funny how nobody now is talking about what the death figures are. We only spoke about them during the pandemic. So, the thing that the thought, the nose is going again. Notice that? I've got my hanky. It's because I've got this cold. I've got one of those, these colds that you can get where there's no immediate, over the top, oh, I'm feeling so ill, I'm going to die and all of this, what shall I do? And you don't feel like doing anything. It's just one of those colds, it's a bit like the subconscious mind, the driving thing. The body is going, oh, okay, we've had this cold before, I know what to do. I'm just going to deal with it in its way. And we'll just, there will be a bit of mucus coming out of his nose, so we'll just do a bit of that. He'll have a bit of an itchy nose, but it's not really going to disturb him too much because the body is just going, well, we'll just do it in the background. Let him carry on doing all the nonsense that he does and he'll be all right. So that's how I feel about that. That's what that kind of cold. It's not one of those new colds where the body's going, oh my God, I've not had this before. Bloody hell, we can't cope with this. Right, shut everything down. We're going to have him to lie down for a bit. He needs to sit down, lie down, shut his eyes and shut the hell up because he's irritating too many people. I think that's sometimes how a cold kind of comes in when it's new, and then the body's going, right, what the hell are we going to do? Right, okay, let's get the immune system back charged up. Come on, Ray, get up, do something. You've been sitting on your fat bum for ages. Sometimes I think that is how the body works. But anyway, there we go. Right, that's my thought. So what do you think about thinking? Maybe you don't think anything about thinking because you're not thinking. Maybe you've thought so much that you don't know what to do. You obviously have to think in order to write a comment, even if it's, oh, Richard, I just thought that was a load of old rubbish, which I'm sure most people are, most of the comments I get is, Richard, stop talking. It's probably, that's the comment that a lot of people would like to write, isn't it? Let's be fair. Richard, just stop talking. And I will shortly. So at 1906, let's just have a quick look at some of the comments. I won't do too many of these. Evils of social media. Ingram Carr says, I use Facebook, I think it means Instagram. I call it Instantgram. I don't know why. And Twitter, mainly to market business. Yes, I think if you're marketing, it's fine. But it's that sharing your breakfast. Who wants to know that? I occasionally, but refrain from reading the comments. It's heading to the comments, which are usually toxic. I totally agree with you. Doodle Sparking Cleaning says, as I've said, I totally agree with this. And because my nan are well and lives until 101, should I... Oh, this is the one thing about eating food. As I said before, totally agree with my eating food. She cooked with extra virgin olive oil, so I believe it's okay to use. There we are. She lived to, 101. So there you go. That's a good one. Anthony Conti says, followers are basically pretty lonely people. Are they? Well, as long as they're pretty, then that's all right. But if they are pretty, why are they lonely? You'd think that pretty people wouldn't be lonely. So I'm not quite sure about that. These people who are pretty lonely, they should get out. Because if they're pretty, I'm sure they'll attract a lot more people. Trevor Ford says, I don't blame you. Twitter is really toxic. Bloody is, I tell you. YouTube is relatively safe to use. I feel better for it not using it myself. I suspect you will too. Not quite sure what you mean there. YouTube is relatively safe. I feel better for it not using it myself. Right. Okay. Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate it very much. And Peter Drew says, "I can only agree with you. This is the sheep herd working there. I agree, but I'm very thrilled. I have to say that you agree with me. It's quite right." Mr. Bazaby says, "Global warming. He's a bloody fraud. It's freezing. It's only September." Well, it's actually here where I am. It was cold a bit abrasive this morning, but the sun is out. It's nice and warm. I very much enjoy the sun. Malice in Punderland says, welcome to the Verbs show. Love it. Never change, Richard. Thank you very much. I like that. The Verb show. I'm not changing my pronouns. I'm changing my verbs. And English Anley says, where do I begin? Here we go. Instagram is a vanity platform. Facebook, you'll maybe have 200 or maybe 300 friends, yet no one asks you how you are, or pass them in the street, they look the other way. The only thing Facebook is good for is group events. Other than that, it's rubbish. I agree with you, though, Richard. Yeah. Yes, I run the Bald Explorer Facebook group, or I'm barely there these days, to be honest with you. And Julia very much enjoys doing that, and so I sort of deflect that because I'm so busy, lost in thought, thinking up new ideas. So important that I sit on a soft cushion with my fingertips pressed together and an erect spine, my legs crossed in a fashion which actually makes my pelvis really hurt, and I'm omnipotently thinking of something interesting for the next chinwag, which is what I shall do next. Do let me know how your thinking is going on, and if you have other ways of getting the old cogitation working, be fascinated to read it. Thanks for watching today. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.